Welcome to another AQA A-level chemistry video. Today I'm going to make a video on anti-cancer drugs. It's again like the previous topic of DNA. It's a very short topic. It's maybe 3, maybe 4 marks in exam, but it might not actually have a high chance of actually coming up in your exam. But it's just good to know it anyway, just in case it might come up. But all you need to know for this topic is if you have a basic understanding of first, if you have an understanding of a year 1 biology, shouldn't have come up, sorry, I always forget to do that. If you have a good understanding of year 1 biology, then this topic will be very useful to you, or very easy for you to understand. So that one understanding of how DNA, if you understand the basic concept of DNA replication and cell replication and the importance of DNA replication interface and how that would affect how that leads to then mitosis later on, then that'll be very useful for you to understanding this basic concept of anti-cancer drugs and what they're actually doing. But then again, you don't need to have to an in-depth understanding. This is A-level chemistry at the end of the day, so you don't have to understand a lot of A-level biology to understand this topic. Because again, it's like 3 marks, but it's also 3 marks is still also quite helpful. So if you do understand it, then this will be quite useful to you. So anyway. So DNA replication depends on unzipping, which is just the hydrolyzing the DNA strands of the double helix, and drugs can prevent the replication of cancerous cells. So in DNA replication, first of all, let's just understand what's actually going on here, right? So I'm not going to go too much in A-level biology because this is a chemistry video, but I'll go a little bit in A-level biology so you can kind of understand how cancer drugs actually develop. So in a very basic understanding of it, DNA replication, which is a part of a stage called interphase, one of the phases of interphase, or they call it S phase, synthesis phase, is just a part where the DNA strands break apart and then a new nucleotides join together for semi-conservative replication. So the strand actually has to split apart to form to actually a pair of new nucleotides and that's how you can double the DNA strands together, and that allows for two semi-conservative, basically two duplicate strands to be formed. Once that actually happens, then you go to mitosis. I'm not going to go into the stages of mitosis. I'm not going to go and do that, but that allows for mitosis to happen. Once that mitosis happens, you already know in mitosis 2 new daughter cells happen, 2 new daughter cells form. Now cancer cells, that's how my cancer cells develop. They develop by mitosis. So they would just do, they'd have to have interface first, and then those cancer cells would then divide by mitosis. And once they double in number, they double in size, the tumor becomes very great, and then worst case scenario starts to metastasize, right? But the way, if you prevent DNA replication, which is part of in that interface stage, if you prevent that DNA replication by preventing the strands from separating, because DNA replication requires the strands to separate, i.e. DNA replication depends on unzipping, which the unzipping part is just a very basic term of just saying that you're hydrolyzing the hydrogen bonds between the nitrogenous bases that hold the two DNA strands together. So if you hydrolyze it, that's how you break and separate the strands. Now, if you prevent the strands, all the hydrogen bonds, or not all hydrogens, but if you prevent the 2 strands from separating, therefore DNA replication can't occur, S phase can't occur, interphase is halted at that point, no mitosis can occur, and therefore the cancer cells, the tumor cells, can't divide by mitosis, and it can't progress. You stop division, you can stop the development of cancer cells. Now, I only said that part. I didn't want to make this video too long, but I wanted to have that in mind as I'm going through this video, so you have an understanding of why these cancer drugs are used and how they actually work, so that you just have a great understanding of it. So, cause of cancer. So, cancer is caused by malfunctioning DNA replication. If the DNA sequence is incomplete, damaged, or altered, it can lead to medical problems. This can come from exposure to radiation or carcinogenic chemicals. In cancerous cells, mutations happen and DNA replication is uncontrolled. Right, so this is just basically giving you, just explaining to you how cancer cells really develop, and that's just due to mutations in the DNA sequence that will lead to well they cause the changes to the DNA can changes in the DNA can actually affect the cell's purpose first of all, and it can also cause the cell to become to develop. Sorry, it can lead to uncontrolled cell division. That is how cancer cells actually. That is what cancer cells are. Cells that undergo uncontrolled cell division, or uncontrollably divide. And if you prevent those cells with that uncontrollably divide from dividing, you've pretty much stopped the tumor from developing. So I'm going to explain how it is. But that is what tumor cells are. They're just cells that undergo uncontrolled cell division. And if an uncontrolled cell division means that you need to have an uncontrolled rate of DNA replication. And that's what all the cancer drugs do. If they don't do the whole mitosis process, all they do is they prevent DNA replication, which is part of interphase. And if you prevent that, you prevent mitosis and you prevent cell division by mitosis. So one type of cancer drug is called cisplatin. Cisplatin is an anti-cancer drug. So cisplatin is a square planar platinum complex with 2 ammonia and 2 chloride ligands. Now this part here is to do with A-level, so year 2 in organic chemistry. So you won't know what this structure. I have an example of what it is here, but to fully understand what a ligand is, square planar should be able to understand. I wasn't going to draw it out as a square planar because I just want to draw it out like this, but it is a square planar complex. Square planar means 90 degrees, doesn't it? 90 degrees. Yes, I think yes. But cisplatin undergoes a ligand again. Cisplatin undergoes a ligand exchange reaction in body and binds to nitrogenous bases in DNA. You don't need to understand what ligand exchange reaction is, but just know that it binds to the nitrogenous bases in DNA, and that if it binds to the nitrogenous bases in DNA on both sides, it kind of holds the 2 strands together. And I'll show you an example of what I mean later on, so that I'll come back to show you exactly what I mean. You don't need to know the actual mechanism for this or anything like that, because that's way out of your depth of understanding. All you need to know is that it's an anti-cancer drug, and it does a ligand exchange reaction. Again, you'll know more about ligand exchange reactions once you do your organic chemistry. It does the ligand exchange reaction and binds to nitrogenous bases in DNA, and it kind of holds them together. The best way I can think about this, right, is things like there's a scene in if any of you've watched Captain America Civil War, right, where Captain America's holding the actually you know what forget about that. There's a scene in SpiderMan, right, where SpiderMan's pulling 2 buildings with he's got a web shooter on one hand, a web shooter on the other hand, and he's kind of holding 2 buildings together with his hand. That is pretty much what cisplatin is actually kind of doing. Alright, had to just kind of get something quickly, but that is what. So as I was saying before, so cisplatin can prevent DNA replication by attaching 2 nitrogenous bases of the 2 strands of the double helix, and this inhibits the unzipping or the hydrolysis of the DNA strands. So all it is that it's just holding it. It's in the middle of the 2 strands. Imagine if I have the 2 DNA strands, and I have an example below. If I have the 2 DNA strands and the nitrogen base is here and it's the hydrogen bonds here, cisplatin is here directly in the middle, like where the hydrogen bonds would be, and it's bonded to the nitrogenous bases in a way. And as some of the hydrogen bonds or DNA helicase is trying to, by the way, if you don't know already, DNA helicase is an enzyme that's used to hydrolyze hydrogen bonds between the nitrogenous bases. So as it's doing that, it gets cisplatin and it can't do it. It can't break the. It can't. Cisplatin is very those ligand bonds, or those dative bonds that platinum would now have with nitrogenous bases are very, very strong. You're not going to break them. So that is what cisplatin is doing. It's just preventing the hydrolysis, or so it prevents the DNA strands from separating. They're not separating. They can't separate because cisplatin has prevented them. Has prevented DNA helicase from hydrolyzing all the bonds, and now if that happens, they can't go semi-conservative replication, and therefore mitosis can't occur because you don't have 2 separate strands of DNA that will go to either side of the poles and then get split. So this is what cisplatin actually looks like. Is a same side. By the way, there is something called transplanting, which is just, so if you know about EZ isomerism or anything like that, so cisplatin is on the same side, If I just if I was to go about swapping them over, right, there is a way of, yeah, if I put the Cl here and put the NH3 here, and then I kind of like, yes. Sorry, this is a terrible example here, but this would be transplanting, opposite side. And now cisplatin is the one that you use, but you can also use we also use transplanting. It just depends on the situation that we're using them in, but they're both cancer drugs. But the one you need to only know is cisplatin. And most of the time, they might just ask you to just draw the shape. They won't ask you anything more about the structure of cisplatin apart from just drawing it out. And you know that cisplatin means like same side. That's it. That's all you need to do. Now, the thing about SpiderMan thing that was kind of going on from before people don't understand is this scene here. This is the perfect example of what cisplatin would be doing. If the hydrogen bonds, imagine these are all like the hydrogen bonds here, and there was like a DNA helicase that's trying to separate the bonds. All it is, like this would usually happen. So DNA, if SpiderMan wasn't here, right? If SpiderMan wasn't here, the ship would just be able to split easily into well, this is a weird situation, but the ship would be able to be split easily in two. But because now SpiderMan's here, and imagine that acting as cisplatin, it's a very strong thing that's kind of preventing, and that's very difficult to break apart, and it's now bound to certain parts of the ship, and that prevents the two ships from separating. Now the two ships can't separate, and that prevents whatever's going to happen later on. But that is what that cisplatin is just doing. It's just holding certain parts of the DNA, i.e. the nitrogenous bases, and it's very strong to separate apart. But you don't even have to have many cisplatin. You just need that at one point in the DNA, between the two DNA strands, and that's enough. And it just pulls it together, rather than allowing it to separate apart. Alright, so cisplatin issues. Now, there are issues with cisplatin. So if this example was, you didn't get this part here, but I just tried to, I don't know, make it interesting. Maybe you could kind of get that point. At least it's how I understood it. But anyway, there are issues with cisplatin though. So problem with anti-cancer drugs is its adverse side effects. So cisplatin isn't selective and also stops normal cells from replicating. So patients become unwell when taking the medication. So all I'm saying here is that it's not specific to cancer drugs. It doesn't choose which drugs are cancerous and then so this process here, this is the example here of what I'm talking about here, but it doesn't select cancer cells and then goes into the nucleus of cancer cells and prevents DNA replication of cancer cells. It does it to any cell. The job that that doctors need to do is be able to administer it in the right way. So they try and aim it at the largest site where there are cancer cells, and that will prevent replication of cancer cells. It's targeted medicine. You're targeting this medicine at a specific site in the body where you believe there's a high concentration of tumor cells, and you prevent DNA replication, hence you prevent cell replication. However, if there are any, it's not selective. So if there's any normal cells, healthy normal cells in that area as well, you're also preventing DNA replication of those cells as well. So that is one of the side effects. So it's not selective. It's kind of like with chemotherapy, right? Or so radiotherapy, you are killing your risk. Your aim is to kill as many of those tumor cells, but you do risk killing normal cells as well. But the overall benefit of being able to kill tumor cells would outweigh the adverse side effects of killing or preventing DNA replication of normal cells as well. But that's the only side effect they need to know, is that it's not selective, and it prevents. I have seen a question like this: what is the problem with cisplatin? It says that it's not selective and it prevents cell replication of normal cells as well. So that is only, again, these could be 1 mark questions or 3 mark questions at the most, but usually 1 mark questions like problems with cisplatin, structure of cisplatin, how does it, or and the max is a 3 mark question asking you how does cisplatin actually prevent DNA replication or prevent progression of, they don't even say DNA replication because that gives away the point. That's a point that they want you to explain. They'll say something along the lines of how does cisplatin, how does this particular cancer drug prevent progression of the cancer, and then you have to go and explain, say cisplatin is a square planar structure that is an anti-cancer drug that would undergo a ligand exchange reaction with nitrogenous bases, and it prevents the two DNA strands from separating. They can't hide they can't, not all the bonds can be hydrolyzed. Therefore, the DNA strands can't be separated. You prevent DNA replication. If there's no DNA replication, mitosis can't happen, cell division can't happen. Tumor cells will eventually die, or they won't be able to. You're preventing uncontrolled cell division. That's at the very most. Right. So here's what cisplatin would actually look like. So this is the example of what I was trying to say here, is what will be going on. So here you'd have here's an example. So you'd usually have your two hydrogen bonds here, free for cytosine guanine, but you can't have here. What is done here is now the ligand exchange reaction would happen, and you'd get rid of your ammonia and your chlorine, and it would just, platinum would now just form a bond here with the data bond with the nitrogenous bases, and that's all it is here. It's just preventing that. Now DNA helicase can't break this. It's too strong of a bond, and therefore that's as far as it would go. And now the two strands can't separate, can't go semi-conservative replication. Now that's all I have to say now. Hopefully this video was helpful. If you have any problems with how I've explained it, leave a comment in the description. Please, if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe.